Welcome back to A Powerless Mage Presents The Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to take a stack of challenging, insightful sources, articles, research, philosophy, and really just turn them into immediate, grounded, and usable knowledge for you. We're here to give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed, not just in theory, but, in practice.
And today we are stepping onto some pretty serious philosophical terrain. It's a topic that addresses one of the most common feelings in modern life, I think, that feeling of dissatisfaction that, life is happening to you rather than being driven by you. Our sources lay out this really comprehensive framework. They call it the path of the warrior.
Now, hold on. I can already hear people thinking about medieval armor or military history. So let's be really clear right up front. This deep dive has nothing to do with battlefield tactics. This is not a history lesson. It's all about personal philosophy. Our sources propose a pretty radical redefinition of what a warrior actually is. And it's one that's focused entirely on internal excellence, on radical self-responsibility, resilience, and protective duty in your everyday modern life.
That's exactly right. Our goal here is to extract a highly disciplined, but also a very actionable philosophy for navigating the chaos of the modern world. Whether that's chronic frustration at work or overwhelming anxiety or just that nagging feeling that you're underperforming in your own life. We want to show you that adopting this warrior way, as they call it, isn't some lofty, unreachable ideal. It's actually a tangible, a viable pathway to a more robust, a more prepared, and ultimately a much more meaningful life. And that's regardless of your current job or your background.
Yeah, the power of these sources is really in the surprise, I think. They propose that the true warrior mindset is, it's universally applicable. It just strips away the uniform, the armor, the title, and it asks what core commitment is left. And it really boils down to this commitment to continuous superiority. But that superiority is applied almost entirely to yourself, to mastering your own internal environment.
Mm-hmm. It's an invitation, really, an invitation to elevate your life by elevating your standards and to recognize that, the demands of life are often ruthless and that preparation is probably the only moral response to potential catastrophe.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So the first and maybe the most crucial clarification the sources offer is that this is a reflective personal definition. We're not at all interested in the academic or, the institutional definition of a warrior. The context here is purely the search for a more meaningful, a more self-directed way of life for you, the listener.
And they immediately draw a very sharp line between a warrior and a soldier, which I think is so important. Mm-hmm. A soldier, by this definition, is tied to an institution.
Right.
They wear the uniform, they protect a nation, they follow orders, they have a defined job title and, probably a retirement plan. Their duty is external, it's organizational.
Exactly. Conversely, a warrior is defined by an intrinsic, a personal choice. It's an internal commitment to continuous striving, to push oneself beyond conventional limits. And while a good soldier should embody the qualities of a warrior, discipline, competence, readiness, the title of warrior in this philosophical sense is earned. It's earned through consistent, independent action and unwavering commitment, completely separate from any institutional status.
That distinction is just huge for our listeners, especially for anyone who might feel stuck in their current situation. It means you don't need a commission or a promotion or permission from anyone else to start on this path. You don't have to quit your job or change your entire career.
Precisely. It is a conscious, continuous internal choice. Let's imagine you're a teacher. You can choose to be just a soldier of the education system, doing the bare minimum, following the curriculum, clocking in and out. Or you can choose to be a warrior, committing to superior mastery of your subject, superior engagement with your students, and frankly, superior resilience against all the bureaucratic friction. The job title is exactly the same, but the internal condition, the output, and the meaning you get from it are fundamentally different.
And that offers an immediate solution to that feeling of stagnation. If you feel dissatisfied, if you believe you're underperforming, or if you feel like external forces are dictating your happiness, this mindset gives you an immediate point of leverage. It says, look, the institution doesn't matter. Your personal internal commitment to excellence is the only variable you can actually control.
Yes. And the definition really elevates the term warrior. It removes it from that distant, domain of historical myth, and it places it squarely in the realm of modern daily responsibility and striving. To choose this path is simply to choose continuous self-improvement and high integrity as your baseline response to the inevitable conflicts of just being alive. It's a state of being, and it's available right now.
It's just fascinating how the source insists that the choice to commit is what matters most. It's not about being the strongest person in the room or the smartest. It's about being the most committed person in the room. Committed to growth, committed to protection, and committed to overcoming your own inertia.
And that commitment has to be daily. It's not a switch you just flick once. It's a standard you maintain. If you commit to being, say, financially superior, you don't just read one book on finance and call it a day. No, you engage in the continuous process of budgeting, of learning, of resisting temptation. That consistent, sustained effort is what makes the choice real.
Okay, so let's move to the battlefield, which in the modern warrior's life is almost never a physical place. The sources define war very simply. It's basically an agreement to solve a conflict by demonstrating superiority. So if that's true, the warrior has to personify that superiority. Superiority of spirit, of competence, of intellect, not just physical strength.
Right. We have to radically update our understanding of war. The sources really emphasize that war isn't just a clash between nations. It permeates every area of existence where a fundamental conflict arises that demands a resolution.
This is where it gets highly personal and I think really relevant to the listener. When we talk about enemies, we're often talking about internal forces or systemic forces that hold us back. The enemies are abstract, they're faceless.
Consider the example of ideas. For the listener, the most insidious enemy is often their own limiting belief system, fighting against chronic self-defeating thoughts or the habit of procrastination or, those internalized stories of inadequacy. These ideas threaten your potential. They threaten your future. They demand a relentless fight for mental superiority, because if you don't fight them, they win, and they will absolutely define your life.
Or you could look at conditions. I mean, we all recognize conflicts like the fight against poverty or the struggle for educational equity or the battle against a global pandemic. These conflicts require immense strategic superiority and sustained strength to resolve. They aren't physical clashes, but they demand the same commitment, the same discipline, and the same willingness to sacrifice short-term comfort for a long-term victory.
The source offers a really sobering but extremely clarifying example. Think about an individual fighting a chronic illness like cancer. That is a war with no possible surrender. If that person refuses to fight, if they give up mentally, emotionally, and fail to stick to their treatment protocol, the condition will inevitably lead to their extermination. They didn't seek out that war, but they are absolutely obligated to participate in the fight.
Okay, I have to inject some listener skepticism here because I can hear it already. If we use a word as dramatic as war to describe, finally cleaning out the garage or tackling a difficult spreadsheet at work, doesn't that trivialize the seriousness of actual physical warfare?
That's an essential question, and the sources handle it by refocusing the definition. The power of the term war here isn't in its scale, but in its stakes and its requirement for superiority. So if cleaning your garage is a war, it's because the mental conflict, the procrastination, the self-judgment, that overwhelming inertia is threatening your peace and your dignity. The term war simply reinforces that refusing to fight means a guaranteed loss of control over that specific part of your life. It demands a warrior's level of commitment, preparation, and strategy, even for a task that seems mundane.
So the warrior stance is really about refusing to be a passive victim of circumstances. They don't seek out war, but they're not afraid to recognize it when it appears, no matter how small or how internal that conflict might seem.
Exactly. The difference between the ordinary person and the warrior is that the ordinary person is often shocked by the arrival of conflict. They feel victimized. They ask, why me? The warrior, on the other hand, having already recognized that life is inherently full of conflict, a continuous struggle against entropy and external threats, is simply prepared to engage with superiority.
And when you start to define your enemy as your own financial illiteracy or the chaos in your home or the lack of rigor in your daily routine, you realize the war is happening every day in these subtle, grinding, continuous ways. And every time you choose stagnation, you're conceding territory.
It's a call to agency. The battlefield might be the trading floor, the boardroom, the nursery, or just your own mind at 3 a.m. But the need for continuous commitment and seeking superiority, that remains constant.
So we want to ask you, the listener, to just reflect on this for a moment. Thinking about your own life, what abstract or faceless war are you currently facing? Maybe it's inertia, maybe it's a chronic lack of fulfillment, or the inability to set boundaries with a difficult relative. What would it truly mean in practical terms to start fighting that conflict with the relentless, continuous commitment to superiority that a warrior brings?
That shift in framing from just a problem to a war, that's the necessary spark for this entire journey.
So, the concept of the warrior is completely inseparable from preparation. The source states it very clearly. Since conflict is inevitable and its timing is unpredictable, a warrior must always be prepared to answer its call. And this isn't just about having a plan B, it's about maintaining peak condition.
And this commitment to peak condition is the fundamental differentiator. If you wait until the conflict arrives to start preparing, you wait until your boss announces layoffs to update your resume, or you wait until you get a dire health warning to start exercising, you are guaranteed to be behind. As the sources remind us, peak condition is what ultimately separates victory from defeat. You can't hope to achieve superiority if you're starting from a deficit.
We see this play out in every aspect of success, don't we? The musician who practices for years for an audition they might never even get. The entrepreneur who builds financial buffers for a recession that may never come. Preparation is all that silent work that makes success appear sudden and effortless to the unprepared observer.
And this preparation isn't a temporary phase. It's an ongoing, continuous process. It's a baseline mode of existence. The sources link this preparation directly to managing fear. Preparation includes learning not to live in fear of war.
This is such a powerful, and it's a science-backed antidote to so much modern anxiety. Fear really thrives in two spaces, uncertainty and incompetence. If you're chronically unprepared, your mind generates panic because it knows you don't have the resources to meet a foreseeable challenge.
But if you know you're prepared, if you're in peak physical, mental, and emotional condition, the source of that panic is fundamentally removed. Fear gets replaced by competence and readiness. You don't eliminate the danger, but you do eliminate the panic that paralyzes an effective response.
I think the highest form of preparation is the mental one. It involves scenario planning, running mental simulations of potential conflicts. If this financial crisis hits, what are my 3 options? If this relationship fails, how will I restructure my life?
The warrior engages in this proactively. They understand that they might spend their entire life prepared for a war that never comes, and that, in fact, is the ideal outcome. You don't invest in self-mastery because you want conflict. You invest in it precisely because it maximizes your chances of avoiding conflict, or, if it does arrive, conquering it swiftly and with minimal damage.
Think about preparation in terms of just mastering a skill. If you decide to master complex project management or a specific piece of software, you invest the hundreds of hours necessary. That skill changes your baseline capability. You may never need that skill in an emergency, but just having that competence changes your demeanor, your confidence, and your agility when you have to adapt to any sudden professional challenge.
The preparation itself becomes the reward because it fundamentally improves your state of being. You're building superiority into your existence, making you less susceptible to the random cruelties and the chaotic demands of life. It's an investment in robust self-sufficiency.
The lesson here seems to be that vulnerability is a function of incompetence and a lack of readiness. If you are constantly vulnerable, you will constantly feel afraid. The warrior chooses preparation as the ultimate path to peace.
And this section introduces a really beautiful ethical twist to the warrior's path. It shifts the focus from purely internal striving to service and protection. The sources define one of the most sacred duties of the warrior as protecting the people around them, their family, their team, their values, their community.
But this introduces a really counterintuitive demand. To protect others effectively, the warrior must prioritize their own health first. If you're perpetually running on empty, mentally exhausted, or physically broken, your capacity to step up for others when they truly need you, to fight their abstract wars alongside them is, it's diminished or entirely non-existent.
This fundamentally redefines self-care. It stops being an act of vanity or luxury, and it becomes a moral obligation. A broken warrior cannot offer real effective protection. This isn't selfish, it is the necessary foundation for genuine service.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This foundation is holistic. It's not just about spending an hour in the gym. The sources explicitly demand peak mental, emotional, and even spiritual health. We should probably break those down because they are crucial for anyone listening today.
Okay, so mental health. That's strategic clarity. In a world that is just defined by constant information overload and distraction, maintaining mental health means building intellectual boundaries. It means implementing filtering systems, prioritizing deep work, and mastering cognitive reframing techniques to prevent those negative, self-defeating thoughts from taking root. A confused mind can't lead, can't strategize, and it certainly can't protect.
And emotional health. That's resilience and stability. This is the capacity to absorb external stress and trauma without having your internal systems just collapse. It means being able to have difficult conversations, to absorb bad news or endure failure without becoming emotionally volatile or reactive, which would undermine the very people you're trying to protect.
And then spiritual health, which is so often overlooked, but it's vital. In this context, it doesn't necessarily mean religious practice. It means defining your purpose, understanding your non-negotiable moral framework, and maintaining consistency between your stated values and your daily actions. This grounding prevents you from burning out or losing direction when the conflict becomes long and difficult.
Yeah, the traditional story suggests self-sacrifice means running yourself into the ground for others. The Warrior's Code completely rejects this. It demands that you be full of energy, full of clarity, full of resilience, so that you can give from a place of strength and overflowing resources, not from a place of depletion and resentment.
And this is directly linked to that idea of superiority we talked about earlier. If war requires a demonstration of superiority for resolution, your holistic health is the baseline for that superiority. If your inner state is chaotic or weak, your ability to demonstrate superiority over an abstract enemy like burnout or chronic self-doubt is zero.
And the sources establish a vital ethical boundary here, which prevents this self-focus from turning into narcissism. The warrior's well-being comes first, but it never comes above everyone else's. They must never harm others for their own benefit, because that entirely betrays the core purpose of protection. The moment self-improvement is used to dominate or exploit, you're not a warrior anymore. You're a predator.
It sets an incredibly high moral standard for self-improvement. Your relentless drive for excellence is fundamentally an investment in your capacity to serve, to safeguard, and to uplift others. It roots the entire philosophy in a functional altruism.
So, we want you to consider this deeply. If your inner strength, your mental, emotional, and spiritual health is the non-negotiable foundation of your ability to effectively help and protect those you care about, what is one area of your personal health that needs immediate, dedicated strengthening so that you can better serve your loved ones and your community? Where are you currently running at a deficit, and what is the first step toward correcting that?
The duty always starts from within.
Okay, so we move now from preparation to the ethical compass that guides the fight. The sources outline 4 core, non-negotiable values that transform the abstract idea of a warrior into an actionable, ethical framework for daily life. And those are strength, love, respect, and wit.
And these are not just, words for an inspirational poster. These are functional parameters for making decisions under stress. Let's really unpack the depth that's hidden in each of these 4 pillars.
First up is strength. We've already established this goes far beyond just physical ability. The sources define it as the capacity to endure hardship, to absorb catastrophic setbacks, and to overcome adversity. It is fundamentally resilience.
In a modern context, strength is the capacity to be repeatedly knocked down by, say, business failures, personal rejections, or difficult parenting challenges, and still show up the next morning with that same unwavering commitment to the goal. It's intellectual stamina, the willingness to wrestle with a complex problem until it yields, and it's emotional fortitude, the ability to keep pushing even when your environment is telling you to just quit. The warrior understands that if excellence is the goal, strength is the fuel required for the continuous, inevitable grind.
Next, and this is often the most surprising one for people who picture a cold, distant fighter, is love. The sources call this the critical link to reality. So why is love so crucial for someone who's committed to superiority and conflict resolution?
Well, love allows the warrior to relentlessly seek truth, even uncomfortable truth, and to stay connected to reality and the people who populate it. If a warrior acts solely out of, cold, abstracted logic or blind ideological aggression, they become detached. They lose touch with why they are fighting and what they are trying to preserve.
That's a great point, like a CEO trying to save a failing company. If they're motivated purely by cold financial metrics, they might implement these draconian cuts that just destroy morale and innovation. But if they operate with love for reality, meaning love for the people who make the business work and love for the mission, they'll seek solutions that preserve the core while eliminating waste. Love grounds the warrior in the value of what they protect: life, family, community, core principles.
Yeah. If you're fighting for some abstract idea of winning without love, you risk becoming destructive. Love ensures that the warrior maintains moral integrity and that their superiority is always used for preservation, never for senseless destruction or personal gain at the expense of others.
The third value is respect, and this covers respect for the rules of engagement for all forms of life, and critically, for the ideas that inspire the fight, both your own and those of your opponent.
Respect is the bedrock of discipline. Respect for the laws means the warrior operates within a recognized moral and ethical framework, preventing arbitrary violence. Respect for life ensures that preservation remains the ultimate goal. And respecting the ideas that inspire the fight ensures the commitment is deep and principled.
And crucially, it means the warrior respects the commitment of their abstract opponent. They don't underestimate the difficulty of the task, whether that's a tough competitor in the marketplace, the sheer complexity of learning a new skill, or an entrenched limiting belief in their own mind. Underestimation leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to defeat. Respect demands rigor.
Finally, we arrive at wit. This is the intelligence needed to read situations quickly, to adapt instantly to changing circumstances, and to find unexpected, low-cost paths to victory, or to accept a dignified defeat.
Wit is that strategic mind that separates brute force from effective action. In the modern world, this means seeking out mental models, mastering critical thinking frameworks, and engaging in scenario planning. When the conflict shifts, and all modern conflicts do rapidly, the warrior uses wit to pivot instantly.
We can expand on that idea of adaptation. Think of it in terms of the OD loop: observe, orient, decide, act, which is a concept used in military and business strategy. The warrior with superior wit can cycle through that loop faster than their opponent. They observe the situation, they orient themselves, understand the context, they decide on a response, and then they act, all before the threat can even process its own next move.
And let's not just gloss over that last phrase, accepting a dignified defeat. This requires the highest level of wit. It means recognizing when continuing the current path is futile, adapting your strategy, salvaging what you can, and learning from the loss, rather than just pursuing blind, costly aggression that leads to complete ruin. Dignity in defeat is the ability to walk away with your core values and your lessons learned intact.
These four values, strength, love, respect, and wit, they form a complete system for the warrior's internal governance. They're mutually reinforcing, ensuring that the excellence they seek is both powerful and moral. And following this code drives the warrior toward a purpose that often surprises people who only focus on the violence of the title. A warrior understands that war is inherently a catastrophe. It's the worst possible scenario.
Right. There are no good conflicts in this philosophical sense. Every single war, whether it's an internal struggle with addiction or a global economic battle, is the visible result of massive failure. A failure of diplomacy, a failure of intelligence, a failure of preparation, or a failure of health.
Therefore, a true warrior never seeks to start a war, but they must possess the supreme will and the necessary power, that superiority, to end it. That power is the cultivated competence they've built through relentless preparation and by adhering to the code. The goal is always resolution, achieved through demonstrated superiority.
So the warrior strives to be at their absolute best, not to dominate or impose blind violence, but to rise above the cycle of conflict, and most importantly, to preserve life. The source is crystal clear on this. Any goal pursued without the preservation of life, of self, of loved ones, of community, of core values, is completely empty.
And this is why the warrior accepts the potential cost of their commitment. They honor the shared reality of conflict, which might demand the ultimate sacrifice for a cause by giving everything they have to the struggle. If they encounter another individual or force that's operating with equal commitment, the resulting struggle is seen with a solemn recognition of ultimate effort. It's not an opportunity for celebration or trophy hunting. It's the respectful acknowledgement of commitment.
To live as a warrior is to relentlessly strive for excellence, and in doing so, to become an inspiring example. Your discipline, your clarity, your resilience, they become tangible proof of possibility for those around you. You demonstrate what is achievable through commitment.
And critically, this path champions autonomy and dignity. A true warrior bows to no one. They are masters of their own destiny and integrity, governed only by their commitment to their code. And they do not allow others to bow to them. The warrior is not an idol to be worshipped, but a way of living to be adopted. They seek sovereignty, not subservience.
This path demands full personal sovereignty. You are responsible for your own peak condition and your own choices. You aren't looking for someone to lead you, and you aren't trying to accumulate followers. You're simply upholding a standard of excellence.
So we encourage you to spend some time on this reflection. If you commit right now to pursuing excellence guided by this code, what specific actions in the next week would tangibly demonstrate your strength, your love for reality and others, your respect for the process and the difficulty, and your strategic thinking to those around you? Make those four abstract concepts real through your behavior.
So we spent a lot of time defining the path of the warrior, but the sources are mature enough to acknowledge a tough reality. This path isn't for everyone, and the choice not to pursue it can also be an honorable one. But we need to be unflinching about the cost.
The sources are very, very clear about the implications of opting out. We need to be aware of what it means to choose inaction, because there is an immense, inevitable price attached to that decision.
The primary price is the surrendering of personal autonomy in times of conflict. This is maybe the hardest truth to swallow. When ordinary people choose to step aside, when they choose unpreparedness, stagnation, and passive observation, they hand over the power to decide the outcome and the consequences of that conflict entirely to the warriors, or to the forces, abstract or real, that the warriors are fighting.
The stop reality is that the opinions of the uninformed, the unprepared, and the inactive, when decisions have to be made under pressure in the heat of a conflict, those opinions often carry very little weight. Their perspective is based on observation and speculation, not on the lived experience of cultivated competence and risk.
Let's apply this to a modern daily conflict. If you're facing the war against personal debt and financial instability, but you choose to remain uninformed, you refuse to budget, and you fail to prepare for economic shifts, you have effectively handed over the outcome of that conflict, security of your home, your retirement, to external banks, to the stock market, or to simple inflation. You can't then complain about the outcomes that were decided by forces you never actively prepared to face.
Opting out guarantees an increase in the risk of defeat. Sometimes that increase is small. Sometimes, especially if the threat is internal, relentless, and systemic like chronic mental health issues or addiction, it makes defeat almost certain. If you choose not to fight the abstract enemy of chronic self-doubt and underperformance, that enemy will define your life's ceiling.
The sources aren't demanding violence, but they are demanding action. You have to be committed to demonstrating superiority over the threat, whatever form it takes. Inaction is not neutrality. It is the default position of vulnerability, and it allows external forces to dictate your consequences.
And this directly relates to that deep satisfaction that so many of our listeners are seeking. When you choose to opt out of the fight for excellence, you sacrifice your voice and your agency in the moments that matter most. The world is shaped by those who are prepared and competent. If you are not one of them, you are merely a recipient of their decisions and the consequences of their conflicts. This brings us to the most challenging philosophical hurdle. If one chooses not to fight, they must accept the responsibility of the loss. If they fail to do that, the alternative is emotionally and psychologically crippling. It's living permanently as a victim, trapped in constant despair, and nurturing this deep-seated resentment toward the world.
And that state of victimhood is a separate, perpetual emotional war you're fighting against yourself. You're constantly mourning losses that you never actively committed to fighting to prevent. The failure to accept responsibility for inaction ensures that the original loss never heals. It just festers into chronic resentment.
The warrior's path, by contrast, is presented as being aligned with the fundamental nature of humanity. The sources argue pretty compellingly that growth and continuous self-overcoming are the natural state of human beings. Therefore, adopting the life of the warrior, a life of striving for continuous excellence, preparation, and strength, is fundamentally a more natural, active, and fulfilling way of living.
That reframes chronic misery and dissatisfaction in a big way. If you're currently feeling directionless or miserable, the source suggests it's not because life is fundamentally unfair. It's because you are likely choosing the path of stasis, which goes against the natural human imperative to grow and overcome. You're trying to live in a state that fights your own biology.
The persistent discomfort and dissatisfaction you feel is your natural self, signaling that you are not striving, you are not growing, and you are not engaging in the superior effort required to demonstrate your full capacity. The discomfort of growth is fundamentally different and far less damaging than the quiet hardship of spiritual and intellectual inaction.
Let's be really clear about that. The pain of discipline is temporary and constructive. The pain of regret and inaction is permanent and corrosive.
However, the source does end this reflection on a necessary note of respect. While arguing that the warrior path is the most natural for growth, it honors those who choose to endure the hardships of inaction and carry that responsibility and pain without resorting to victimhood. Choosing not to be a warrior doesn't make you less human. It simply means you walk a different path, one with its own immense ongoing price and its own strange, quiet dignity. But crucially, you must accept that price.
So what does this all mean? It means the choice to pursue excellence is entirely yours. But the emotional, professional, and spiritual consequences of inaction are absolutely real and will be borne by you alone.
So we want to leave you with this final, crucial reflective question. If the warrior path represents the natural human drive for growth, are you currently choosing the sharp, temporary pain of discipline and striving for excellence? Or are you enduring the quiet, lingering, corrosive hardship of inaction and the risk of permanent victimhood?
That choice May daily defines your life. This deep dive has done far more than just define a term. I think it has fundamentally shifted our understanding of what personal strength and commitment look like in the modern world.
Right. To quickly synthesize the core concepts, the warrior is defined by personal choice, not by an institutional profession, and is committed to continuous self-pushing and superiority. And war is often abstract, a necessary fight against self-defeating ideas or crippling external conditions.
And preparation is holistic. It demands peak mental, emotional, and spiritual health, because your well-being is the only viable foundation for your duty to protect others and your community.
And the warrior's code is defined by those 4 non-negotiable pillars: strength to endure the grind, love to stay connected to reality and humane action, respect for the commitment of the fight, and wit to strategize, adapt, and seek the least destructive resolution.
The ultimate purpose, then, is the preservation of life and dignity, using cultivated superiority not for domination, but for resolution, for peace, and for becoming an undeniable force of positive action in your own life and the lives of your loved ones.
Our final takeaway for you, the listener, is this. The warrior path is a difficult, constant pursuit of excellence designed specifically to give you the operational strength and radical autonomy required to protect what matters most to you, even if the only conflict you ever face is the endless one against your own limitations.
So let's build on the source material's powerful idea of securing autonomy through competence. If self-doubt and dissatisfaction are the abstract enemies threatening your life's goals, and only superiority mastery can truly end that conflict, we leave you with one final provocative question. What specific area of knowledge or skill do you need to master this week right now to secure a definitive, undeniable victory over that persistent internal threat?
Don't simply take our word, put everything you heard here to the test. Make this knowledge truly yours.
We invite you to share your ideas, your thoughts, and experiences in the comment section. Like this deep dive if you enjoyed it or it was useful to you, and subscribe to learn more about similar topics. Remember, the power is yours. Open this waiting land. I hold my blade but won't start the fight. I carry strength within my hand to end the clash and make things right.